a lot of what I'm going to talk to you about will be centered around two themes, right? One is think, believe, work hard. And the second theme is going to be shit happens, but it happens for the best, and you will only know it further down in life, which is sort of a snippet out of one of the best commencement speeches by Steve Jobs. There are two things that I learned, right? That investment bankers work long hours. And the second thing I learned is that investment bankers work long hours. And it never stops.
Okay, awesome.
First up, let me ask you something. What kind of a student were you when you were growing up? Economics आपने पढ़ी है, and then sort of that transpired into you going to London School of Economics as well, which is termed as the Mecca of economics. I mean, this is my term. I don't know who calls it, but yeah. I mean, so what was that like for you growing up? Was the interest always there towards numbers? Were you a kind of a kid who sort of decided कि हाँ ठीक है यही field है, मुझे इसी में अपना career बनाना है?
So, typical Indian family, life में दो career options हैं, या तो engineer बनोगे या medicine करोगे, right? Now I don't know how much that world has changed, but that is the world that I grew up in. So engineering was the way forward, and numbers were fun for me. I think that is something that I always gravitated towards. Good student, and good to the extent that always first second. So I did class 10 and then class 11, 12. Got into that madness of preparing for IITs. And I think given the student that I was very confident that I was going to get through. So confident that I did not have a backup plan, none. And when the results came out, I was I think 1800th in that list, and they were, at least back then, IITs would take about 1500 students. You go through a point where you're 17, 18 years old. You've always been told that you're exceptionally good because that's the teachers and everyone saying that bachcha kuch bada karega, right? And then the world just falls flat, right? And you're kind of thinking, I don't have a backup plan, right? So I hadn't applied for any other schools, and I was at a place where I said, I don't know what I want to do in life. And I think a lot of what I'm going to talk to you about will be centered around two themes, right? One is think, believe, work hard. And the second theme is going to be shit happens, but it happens for the best, and you will only know it further down in life, which is sort of a snippet out of one of the best commencement speeches by Steve Jobs, right, where he talks about connecting dots. At this point, I don't have a backup plan. I'm trying to figure out what am I going to do. And it so happens that in my school, a head boy 3 years senior to me said that, look, there is a college that I'm at. It's a liberal arts school in the US called Franklin Marshall College, which I had never heard of. And he said, you know what, I think this could be a great career choice for you. So I said, liberal arts school, kya karna hai? But the only sort of shining light out of that was that this was a school where, based on what I had done, there was an opportunity to get a 100% scholarship, right? So now, even back then, education in the US was prohibitively expensive, right? I think it was, back then it was like $35,000, $40,000 a year. Now it's much more, but it was a sum that, we could just not afford. But scholarship mil gayi. So I said, theek hai, let's see what happens, right? A kid who's only thought about engineering in life, I go to the US with a very clear mindset that computer science karenge, mathematics karenge, फिर देखते हैं क्या होता है. So I land up in this school in Pennsylvania, in a small town called Lancaster. Beautiful campus. And first semester goes by, I'm doing everything that I thought I would do, right? Mathematics के advanced courses ले रहा हूँ, computer science कर रहा हूँ. Second semester, somebody said, yeah, there is something called economics, right? Now, if you come from the world that I was, right, and this is, I completed my school in 1999, so significantly older than most of you. Economics was not a cool thing to do, right? It was like, there was that hardcore science wala banda hoga. But I fell in love with economics, right? And it was, seeing that magical, like something happened, right? Because here I was looking at something where it said, yeah, there is a supply demand curve and this is how the world works, right? And there was a sense of science in it, there was common sense in it, there was business in it, right? And I said, dhanda samajh mein aa raha hai ab. And suddenly, when I came back home, parents said, kya kar rahe ho apni zindagi mein? And I said, economics mera major hai. They were shocked. They said, isse kya hoga life mein? And that's where economics started for me, right? And along the way came another opportunity where this college had a 1-year exchange program with the London School of Economics. I said, look, this is wonderful. I was looking at doing engineering, looking at कि यार life में ambition में IT पहुंच गए तो सबसे बड़ी चीज़ हो सकती है. Now suddenly I have realized my true calling is economics, and now I'm able to go to the best possible school there. So that's how LSE happened.
And was it in LSE that you met your life partner, business partner, and probably that time a friend as well?
That time friend as well. So my co-founder of the business Cash Grow is Swati, and we met at LSE. At that point, obviously, it was boy meet girl, and we had like a whole Bollywood sort of thing happening, because
like was it DDLJ?
Utna bhi nahi, but we sort of got to a point where we knew each other well in college. मैं खाना बनाता था, and she was 1 year junior to me, right? So the story was that I'd gotten to a phase when I started work that I would cook a lot of food, and people would just come and eat and they would clean up after that, right? So I said, खाना भी बन गया, बर्तन भी साफ हो गए, and that's when Swati and me started to get to know each other a little bit more. We were flatmates for 2 years. Nothing happened, and then suddenly, right, in a matter of 3 months, we went from those movies, right, where you see boy girl and they're like, I don't even like you, to hum shadi kar rahe hain. So that happened pretty quickly, and something happened after we got married, right, at least in my head, where Swati jokes around saying that most married couples think about where to go on holidays. We were scouting business ideas, and she was like, I think at some point she was wondering who have I just married, because this boy was very happy working in financial services. Now suddenly he wants to do a business. So, but yeah, that's how we met.
And interestingly, you guys went to Goldman Sachs also probably at the same time. Were you guys working together? What was your Goldman Sachs time like? What was her Goldman Sachs time like?
So I did my internship at Goldman. I had an offer from them, but somewhere that startup kida was there, right? So there was a company, startup company, which was again into financial services. They were a hedge fund. And it was a bunch of ex-LSE alum who were running the shop, 5 people. And I realized that there's something just magical in being in a 5-member place. The flow of ideas, the depth of experience you get. You also realize that जो काम मेरा बॉस कर रहा है, जिस दिन वो नहीं है, वो काम मैं कर रहा हूँ. Right? So that level of growth is phenomenal when you're working at a small company. And that was exciting. That was super exciting. So I ended up joining a startup. A year later, when Swati graduated, she ended up joining Goldman. So she was with Goldman for about 5 years. I was on the startup side with hedge funds for about 8.
Right. So discussion around businesses कहाँ होते थे? घर पे होते थे?
हाँ, घर पे होते थे. So we would come back, we would talk about, and I would keep coming up with like a new idea, saying that how about this? And then we would go into that exploration phase, business plan बनाएंगे, go to market strategy बनाएंगे, what can go wrong, what can not go wrong. And I would discuss it with my parents, and I think for the longest time my parents were like, कुछ कर रहा है, but clearly अपना job तो कभी नहीं छोड़ेगा, so चलने दो.
So what was your job like? If I have to ask you, which sector was it in? What kind of role that you had there? And वहाँ पे learning कैसी थी आपकी?
So I was a trader. So I would trade anything that was fixed income. So from plain vanilla bonds to credit default swaps to structured products, right? So if you go back to 2007, a lot of stuff blew up, and we were building a lot of that stuff that blew up. Very fun, very complex, very esoteric in what we were building. Clearly, across the world, financial assumptions were a little flawed, which is kind of what led to all of this. But it was very demanding. It was very analytical. It was also, a place where the demand on attention to detail, right? And that is something that I cannot emphasize enough, is something that I learned. More than, data and analytics and all of that you learn across multiple things, but there is nothing more than the obsession towards detail that financial services teaches you. I remember with my boss, and we would do these, when we were pitching a new product, PPTs would get made. And the challenge was, can you find one misplaced full stop? Typos to दूर की चीज़ थी, right? Misplaced full stop. So every sentence, full stop है नहीं है, कहाँ पे होना चाहिए? And I've literally had presentations thrown back on my face because a full stop was somewhere else. But you know what? It builds this obsession to detail, right? Today when we are thinking about building UX products, I can look at a Figma file and I'm looking at this saying, ये spacing ठीक नहीं है, right? It's just, it's everything through life, right? And as I said, right, getting a presentation thrown back on your face, shit happens, right? You're thinking, what madman am I dealing with? How does it matter? And when you look back, it is so true that everything that goes wrong will come back. And if you can find that silver lining, magic will happen.
Swati was working at a firm which was dealing with investment banking. Were there fights because ऐसा होता है काफ़ी टाइम इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंकर्स घर पे नहीं होते, तो पहले तो खाना बनाना, बर्तन धोना, 2 साल साथ रहना सब हो रहा था, वो टाइम पे कुछ अलग हो रहा था. वे यू ऑल्सो गेटिंग टू नो मोर अबाउट द लाइफ ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंकर्स. क्या चीज़ें ऐसी हैं जो हमें पता नहीं चलती है, हम ओवर हियर कर जाते हैं. सो प्रॉब्ली यू मस्ट हैव लुक्ड एट इट फ्रॉम अ वेरी क्लोज क्वार्टर. सो कैन यू शेयर दैट एक्सपीरियंस अ लिटिल बिट?
There are 2 things that I learned, right? That investment bankers work long hours. And the second thing I learned is that investment bankers work long hours. And it never stops, right? So look, my peer group today is, maybe 16, 17 years working, right? And friends have made partner level, MD level, वो आज भी long hours कर रहे हैं. And I think that was one of the big realizations for us, right? That hard work is going to happen regardless, right? Whether you work for a investment banking firm, accountancy firm, whatever you do. If you can do it for yourself, it just becomes so much more joyful. And I think that was one of the very pivotal reasons for, Swati to say that, look, I'm done. I want to do something else.